It's D-U-E-U tell. I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah. D-U-E-U.
Welcome to Football Game Plan's NFL All 32. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Make sure you follow me on all of my social media accounts, and we have an action-packed NFL Week 2 show for you guys lined up, and we're going to get this thing kicked off by taking a look at some of the key storylines heading into Week 2 as we go into our 4-minute offense. Week 1 got off to a great start on the football field, but it also yielded some big-time injuries to key players as well. We saw the Indianapolis Colts lose running back Marlon Mack to an Achilles injury. The Steelers lost their starting tackle Zach Banner to an ACL tear on Monday Night Football, and star perimeter players in Michael Thomas, a wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints, and tight end George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers are either day-to-day or week-to-week with a high ankle sprain and a knee sprain, respectively. Now, the Jets' Le'Veon Bell, the tailback, will also miss some time with a sore hamstring that he suffered against the Buffalo Bills. So you wonder if the lack of preseason games played a role in some of these soft tissue injuries, and the answer is we may never know. You just hope that we've seen the last of these type of major injuries for the rest of the season. Seeing the wide receiver depth chart looking the way it currently does for San Francisco, the 49ers went out and signed the veteran wide receiver Mohamed Sanu in an attempt to give them some stability and production at that position until their star wide receiver Deebo Samuel can return from a foot injury. Now, Sanu was released this summer by the New England Patriots after only one season, but still has a lot of good football left to give to a team, and the 49ers will give him every opportunity to do just that. I would expect to see him to get a lot of work this Sunday against the New York Jets out there in MetLife Stadium. Also in Week 1, we saw some excellent performances by some rookies helping spearhead their teams to victories. In the NFL opener, Clyde Edwards-Helaire stole the show against the Houston Texans, rushing for over 130 yards with no shortage of wild plays at his disposal. He will provide that extra ammo to their offense this upcoming season. So will Raiders rookie wideout Henry Ruggs III, who led the team in receiving yards and catches against the Carolina Panthers. Ruggs would average an impressive 18 yards a catch, which is a major reason why he was drafted by Las Vegas in the first round, to be that deep threat within their passing game. Defensively, Washington's Chase Young made his presence felt early and often versus the Philadelphia Eagles in an upset victory. The number 2 overall pick was able to rack up 4 tackles and 1.5 sacks on Sunday, proving to be worth his draft selection at that number 2 spot. And in Jacksonville, rookie cornerback C.J. Henderson was able to pick off Phillip Rivers and broke up another 3 passes in their upset win versus the Indianapolis Colts. So needless to say that these guys, amongst others, were able to pay back their respective teams pretty quickly for their draft selection. And it's an annual Week 1 tradition, overreaction analysis to what just happened in the opening week of the NFL season. Listen, going into a football week, you have to understand that half the teams will lose games. So if your team lost in Week 1, it's not the end of the world. Only 2 teams since 1972 have gone undefeated in the regular season, and only one, the 72 Dolphins, unblemished the entire way through. So no, Phillip Rivers and Tom Brady aren't washed up, and no, the Eagles and Cowboys aren't steamrolling toward the number 1 and number 2 overall picks respectively in the 2021 draft. So just calm down, back away from the internet, have some chamomile tea, and just relax. It's a long season. But with that said, there are some teams who did get their wake-up call in Week 1, and we take a look at some of those that have to quickly get this thing going in the right direction in Week 2 in our wake-up call segment presented by Hunter Realty LLC. How about the New York Jets offense? Last week versus the Buffalo Bills, the Jets struggled to run the football, struggled to find consistency in the passing game, and they struggled to pass protect. But other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? But in all seriousness, the Jets have to be better on offense if this team wants to have a chance in 2020. We saw some improvements last year under then first-year head coach Adam Gase down the back end of the season, but that didn't carry over into the summer, nor did it carry over into Week 1. Again, it's early in the season, but I think last week could be the wake-up call that side of the ball needed in order to right the ship. Staying in New Jersey, the Giants offensive line did a solid job in pass pro versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, considering the circumstances. It was in the run blocking department where the Steelers made Saquon Barkley ineffective, making it look like a Tecmo Bowl-like blitz when he got the football. It was so bizarre to see that it made me think that there was a key that the Steelers picked up on that signified when it was going to be a run play. Maybe it was by formation, a call by the center or the quarterback, but whatever it was, the Giants have to fix it quickly as they face another tough defense in the Chicago Bears. The Dallas Cowboys defense had no answer for the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday night. The front seven could not get penetration to stop the run, and they couldn't get to Jared Goff consistently as they went to a quick, short passing game. And on the back end, they couldn't keep track of the speedy and shifty Ram wideouts all game long. Communication will be an ongoing thing this season in a new defensive scheme, but at some point, pride has to kick in, and guys will have to just fight harder to make things happen. And Baker Mayfield didn't have the best of starts to his 2020 season against the Baltimore Ravens. Mayfield was once again jittery in the pocket and turned the ball over very early in that ball game versus the Ravens. He finished the day going 21 of 39 for 189 yards with a touchdown and an interception. Again, as we said in our power ranking show, on paper, the Browns are a top 15 team, but if number 6 can't wake up and get it together, then they'll find themselves losing more games like they did on Sunday the rest of the way. And that was your football game plan wake-up call presented by Hunter Realty LLC. Now let's kick off our Week 2 previews with Thursday night's game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. This is an intriguing matchup early in the season on Thursday Night Football between the Bengals and Browns. When you look at the Bengals in this ball game, I thought last week versus Los Angeles, they played a well-balanced game. The offense had some balance. The passing game started to click toward the back end of the game, especially in the fourth quarter when it was time to drive down the field for a touchdown or for the game-winning points or game-tying points. But the offensive line is a concern. They have to find ways to protect Joe Burrow. He was under duress that entire game against the Chargers, and the Browns do have some guys up front. Maybe you heard of them. It's Myles Garrett that can also provide pressure as well. So they have to get better up front. But overall, I thought the passing game was fine. The run game had some success, and Burrow started to get better as the game went on. Defensively, they were able to stop the run. They got off the field. So again, it was a solid game plan for Cincinnati. You want to see if they can carry that over for Week 2, but the biggest impact that they'll have to have will be up front along that offensive line. They have to play a lot better. On the flip side, we talked about the Browns offense a little bit when we spoke about Baker Mayfield, but to me, it's all about their run game. I think that's where they're going to have to hang their hats on this season until Baker Mayfield in that passing game really gets going. Their offense could not sustain drives against the Baltimore Ravens. That's something that's going to have to change moving forward. Defensively, it's about making sure you tie up those loose ends on the back end. It wasn't the run game that killed the Browns, it was the passing game of the Ravens that ultimately did them in. They have to do a better job of communicating on the back end if they want to knock off the Bengals. The biggest matchup I'm looking forward to watching in this ballgame that's going to be key is the Bengals linebackers versus the Browns run game. You look at those linebackers like Jermaine Pratt, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Josh Bynes. Those guys play really well against the Chargers and help shut down the run game for the most part throughout the course of the game. They're going to have a tougher task, in my opinion, going up against Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. If they can't stop the run, if those backers aren't as active as they were against Los Angeles, they could struggle. And if the Browns can lean on the backs of both Chubb and Hunt, I think they have a chance to be special. I do like the Browns in this ball game. I think on a short week, what you'll see is them shrink the playbook. So you're going to see more run game, play action passing. The defense should be rested, be able to get after Joe Burrow. So I do see the Browns playing a better game against Cincinnati and coming away with the win. We'll take a quick break and be back with more Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGo Offense. Let's preview some games this weekend. We'll start with the Giants and Bears. I thought Daniel Jones made some significant strides from a pocket awareness standpoint and being a bit more willing to take off and run for those cheap yards. But it's the turnovers that he will have to continue to work on. Where he was better last year was inside the red zone. He struggled against the Steelers in that capacity with some costly mistakes. Now, defensively, I thought the defensive line did fairly well, especially Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. The back seven will need to play with much more consistency this week against the Bears, who will stretch you both horizontally and vertically. Now for the Bears, I like what I saw from Trubisky late in that Lions game, culminating his efforts with a dime throw to Anthony Miller for the game-winning touchdown. Now, can he do that for the full game is the biggest question. Expect the Bears to get their backs out in space against the Giants backers in the passing game. Defensively, it would be wise for the Bears defensive line to study that Steelers tape to see if they can pick up on the same keys that the Steelers did in the run game. The biggest matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing is between cornerback Kyle Fuller and Giants receiver Darius Slayton. That's the matchup the Bears need Fuller to win throughout the day. Now the Giants played the Chicago Bears close last year, and I think we'll see smarter play from Daniel Jones in this matchup. Look for a bounce back game for Saquon Barkley in the Giants run game as they'll get the win versus the Bears. Next, we have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Dallas to take on the Cowboys, and the Falcons offense looked good in spurts against the Seattle Seahawks, but never was able to find that level of consistency that was needed to have success. But in this matchup against the Cowboys, it's going to be up to their offensive line to have a much better effort against the pass rush of the Cowboys, and we know they can go 4 to 5 deep along that defensive line as far as bringing pass rushes. They have to find a way to protect Matt Ryan. Defensively, it's going to be all about that secondary, making plays on the ball, being a little bit more active in coverage. They looked unprepared against the Seahawks, and the Seattle passing game took full advantage. Now for the Cowboys, I thought offensively speaking, they did some good things against the Rams, but they have to be able to create more explosive plays on both sides. That's both in the run game and also in the passing game. And it will be interesting to see how they are able to compensate for the loss of Blake Jarwin, the tight end who is out now for the season with an ACL tear. Defensively, that defensive line has to find a way to play with controlled aggression. The Rams took that away from them last week with the way they ran their offense. The Falcons will try to do something similar to try to take advantage of an over-aggressive defensive front. But if they can't get to Matt Ryan and allow those corners to work against that passing game, it could be a problem like we saw against the Rams. But I do think we'll see a much better effort offensively from Dallas, which should make this game a track meet, which will then also put those edge rushers in an advantageous situation to get after Matt Ryan. The Detroit Lions traveled to Lambeau Field to take on the Packers, and the Lions did everything right last week against Chicago, which should have been a victory for them. The offense had good balance, the defense made some plays and found ways to get off the field, but they didn't finish the drill, so to speak, which ultimately cost them the game. This week, they hope that's not the case, and they hope that Jamie Collins cannot get himself ejected once again. For the Packers, they were able to hit the ground running against Minnesota, looking like they played a couple of games already this season. Aaron Rodgers played lights out, and they got stellar play from their much ballyhooed wide receiver core. Defensively, they were able to frustrate Kirk Cousins throughout the game, but they will have a tougher challenge against a better QB in Matthew Stafford, who can hit any throw on the field, and he can make you pay if you're out of position. But the way the Lions lost against the Bears will be a situation where one loss becomes two, as I see Green Bay jumping out quickly on Detroit and not taking their foot off the gas. Jacksonville travels to Tennessee in an AFC South battle with the Titans, and it should be a fun game to watch because when you look at the Jaguars offense led by Gardner Minshew and a lot of weapons around him, they play a creative, exciting type of game. So a lot of guys will touch the football, and that keeps you guessing defensively, so you truly can't key in on one particular player. They have to keep that multiplicity within their offensive attack going moving forward. Now defensively, they still have a good pass rusher in Josh Allen. I like what I saw from Miles Jack last week. I thought he had a phenomenal game. He's going to be tasked with trying to make sure Derrick Henry doesn't get going. And in the secondary, CJ Henderson had a debut game that was excellent for a rookie corner. So they have some pieces defensively to be successful, but they're going to have to make sure they stop the run collectively once again against Tennessee. Now for the Titans, Ryan Tannehill had a very efficient day against the Denver Broncos, but what I liked the most about his game is that he was distributing the football to many different targets. You saw Corey Davis have a big day. AJ Brown was able to get involved, and they were also throwing the football to Jonnu Smith and other targets as well. So you want to see that continue against the Jaguars defense that's still very young for the most part at all three levels. But defensively, with Jadeveon Clowney playing his second game within this scheme, along with what we saw the Titans do defensively to frustrate Drew Lock toward the back end of that game, I like Tennessee to win this ball game. I think their defense will do a great job of matching up against Jacksonville, and their offense will be efficient once again, helping pave the way to close out a game. In a game that features two teams coming off of embarrassing losses last week, the Vikings head over to Indianapolis to take on the Colts for Minnesota. The offense stalled midway through the first half and never fully recovered until later in the contest when the game was already decided. Quarterback Kirk Cousins gave up a safety and a crucial interception in this game. He has to play better, and I would expect to see more of Cook and Madison in the run game this week against the Colts. Defensively, they could not get to the quarterback, which only compounded the fact that they were playing with a lot of youth out there at corner, which Aaron Rodgers was able to take full advantage of. And I would expect to see things not get easier for them this week against the Colts passing game, although Phillip Rivers will give you a chance at a few passes, which will be important for the Vikings to convert. Now, the Colts were stunned last week by Jacksonville in a game that I thought they relied too much on Phillip Rivers throwing the football. Balance will be the key for them moving forward. You have a great offensive line. Don't just use them in pass pro. Hand that football off to Jonathan Taylor and let him set the pace offensively. Now, on the defensive side, I like what I saw from their defensive line. DeForest Buckner made his presence felt in his Colt debut and just helped strengthen them defensively as a whole. I do like Indy in this ball game. Their defensive front seven will be up to the task of stopping the run, which will allow them to get after Cousins all game long. The Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins face off in their second AFC East battle, as last week both teams played divisional opponents. Bills quarterback Josh Allen is coming off his best day of his career, throwing for over 300 yards for the first time in his NFL career. We saw the benefit of continuity as the Bills' offensive line and defensive line had their way with the New York Jets. Now, the Dolphins' offensive line had mixed reviews against the Patriots as their run game was non-existent. They'll need to get more production out of their backs, and Ryan Fitzpatrick has to do a much better job of protecting the football. He killed a lot of drives last week with his 3 interceptions. Or the calls for Tua Tagovailoa will only get louder in South Beach. I thought the defense, for the most part, did okay, but okay wasn't enough against Cam Newton, and it won't be enough against the Bills' offense that seems to be firing on all cylinders. I like the Bills. Huge matchup in the NFC between the Los Angeles Rams and Philadelphia Eagles, and we saw last week that Rams offense looked like a well-oiled machine going east and west, working every level of the passing game. Their run game was popping against that Cowboys defense, and you have to have that type of mobility, so to speak, against a very aggressive defensive front to keep those guys guessing. Therefore, they can't get aggressive and get up the field. I think that's the key in this game for them against the Philadelphia Eagles. Defensively, those linebackers will have to have an encore performance. We saw them do a solid job over the middle of the field against the Cowboys. We know Carson Wentz and those tight ends love to work over the middle of the field, so they will have to repeat that performance we saw against Dallas. Now, for Philly, again, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I thought they did a good job in the early part of the game. The offensive line held up until things just fell apart. I would call that an anomaly. That's not more of a trend of what we're going to see down the line. So we'll see a better effort from this Eagles offense in this game. I just wonder if they're going to find a way to stay consistent and true to their ability to run the football, because that's going to be key against this Rams defense. And also in the passing game, they have to find ways to strike when the iron is hot. We saw them do that against against Washington. They have to do it against the Rams. Now, defensively, we saw the Cowboys try to get after Jared Goff, but the Rams had an answer for that. The Eagles will have to be a little bit more judicious in how they do so. I think delayed pressure could help them out against Jared Goff, but this game is going to be about offense, and I can trust the Rams right now to get the win. I like Los Angeles.
Man, it's that old thing, perseverance, consistency, hard work. My goal is to put the same work into, my businesses, my family that I put into football, and I've been running with that mantra since I got married back in '97, that if I'm going to have a successful marriage, I got to, the same hard work and same consistency and discipline I had on the football field, I got to put in my marriage and with my kids and with my businesses and all that. So it teaches you a lot, man. How to deal with your fellow man and not look at his color, but look at what he can do for the overall good of what you're trying to accomplish. So sports to me in general is just an incredible deal. When you talk about football specifically, because of the closeness of guys, I just believe it's an amazing sport.
Football is a game of strategy, and it's a game of matchups, and that's why we're going to take a look at some of the key matchups in some of these ball games that you want to keep an eye on as we go into week 2. One of the biggest matchups of the weekend involves the New England Patriots quarterback Cam Newton as he goes up against the Seattle Seahawks. The key matchup to watch is between he and safety Jamal Adams. With Newton being a legitimate +1 in the run game and one of the better passers in football, he is ultimately the focal point of the Seahawks defensive game plan. That's why it wouldn't surprise me to see them designate safety Jamal Adams as their quote-unquote Cam Newton spy. Adams is one of the better point-of-attack safeties in the NFL, showing a knack for consistently making plays behind the line of scrimmage on both ends of defense. He can blitz, he's aggressive in his run fits, and does a great job at making plays. And how they put both players in position for success will be must-see TV. The Saints safeties have a difficult matchup this week in their game against the Las Vegas Raiders tight end Darren Waller. With the Saints' Marcus Williams handling the free safety duties, New Orleans does have a good deal of luxury by being able to match up either Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or Malcolm Jenkins on the big-time receiving threat in Waller. And being a former wide receiver is what makes him such a tough matchup because of his ability as a route runner. He's also a solid catch-and-run guy that the Raiders would like to put on the move and get the football to him quickly. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up on Monday night. The 49ers and Jets are two teams who are looking to bounce back this week, and the biggest matchup in this game, the Niners' star-studded defensive front versus that Jets offensive line. San Francisco had issues dealing with Kyler Murray last weekend against the Cardinals and do face another active guy in the pocket in Sam Darnold. Now the difference may be that Darnold isn't as assertive as Murray, but the Jets offensive line will be looking to rebound after their abysmal performance against the Buffalo Bills. And if the Jets O-line can stabilize and be effective, it increases their chances to win significantly. So we shall see. Out in the desert, the Washington football team takes on the Arizona Cardinals. This is a fun matchup because you have the Washington defensive line, which is littered with first-round picks, including this year's second overall pick, Chase Young, going up against a quarterback in Kyler Murray, who has cartoon speed and is able to extend the play and hit passes deep down the field. Last week versus Philly, Washington was able to adjust to the athletic Carson Wentz, getting him on the ground multiple times and forcing some turnovers. But Murray is a different animal, one that is shorter, quicker like a running back or a receiver, but has a cannon like Dan Marino. Washington will have to play with controlled aggressiveness if they want to make him one-dimensional and stay active at the line of scrimmage, clogging up sight lanes for the diminutive Murray. Atlanta travels to Dallas, and I'm excited to see how the Falcons try to isolate the Cowboys rookie corner Trayvon Diggs with perhaps Calvin Ridley. Now Ridley is fast and explosive in all directions and has the ability to make a taller defensive back like Diggs have some conflict. Now he had a solid debut against the Rams, and although he did give up a big reception down the sideline to Van Jefferson, I thought he played well overall, and I'm sure the Falcons will try to get him matched up versus Julio Jones and Ridley at times throughout the game. But in my opinion, Ridley would be the one that could be in store for a big day if he's drawing that assignment. The New York Giants face off against the Chicago Bears in the Windy City, and I think this would be a fairly tight game like last year, but the biggest matchup the Bears will try to exploit will be running back Rick Cohen and their Swiss Army knife player in Cordero Patterson versus the Giants inside linebackers in the passing game, with Cohen being both quick and explosive along with being a very strong receiver. And with Patterson being a former wide receiver, they create a huge problem for Blake Martinez and Devontae Downs. It'll be interesting to see if the Giants will allow them to match up in man coverage or try to isolate one of those guys with the safety when it's an obvious passing situation and they're on the field. This is one of the game within the game matchups that you want to keep an eye on in Week 2. Let's take a look at some more games on the Week 2 schedule, and we'll start at MetLife Stadium where the Jets play host to the San Francisco 49ers. Quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo has to be a much more assertive player in the passing game this week against the Jets. I know they're extremely beat up on the perimeter, but he has to find ways to keep this offense on pace. We may see them lean a little bit more on the ground game this week as a result. Defensively, they have to play with much better contain as they'll face another QB that likes to escape and extend the play in Sam Darnold. And while he's not Kyler Murray, he still has solid mobility at the position. For the Jets, we spoke about their offense needing a wake-up call, and they are just as beat up as the Niners are on that side of the ball. But for them, Sam Darnold has to start making better decisions in order for them to move forward as a unit. Defensively, there should be opportunities for Quinnen Williams and company to get to Garoppolo, as he tends to be a bit skittish back there in the pocket. It'll be up to them to anchor down versus their run game and force Jimmy G to beat them consistently throwing the football. I still like the Niners in this one. I can trust their offense just a little bit more than the Jets. Carolina takes on Tampa Bay, and it was all good for the Panthers offense, who spread the ball around really well. They put up points on the board and had an overall efficient day, and that was up until the last offensive play where they didn't give the ball to Christian McCaffrey on that fourth down play, which ultimately doomed their comeback. Defensively, it was another story, but an expected one, as they couldn't get the Raiders off the field and gave up far too many big plays in the passing game. Now, Tampa Bay, outside of their opening drive, looked discombobulated against the New Orleans Saints. Now Tom Brady, who is normally good with ball security, wasn't, and was a bit erratic as well. He'll need some help from a run game that wasn't as effective last week versus the Saints. Now defensively, I think Tampa Bay is in a great spot to compete long term. Their linebacking core was excellent against New Orleans, as well as their first round pick, Antoine Winfield Jr. Now defense will be the name of the game here. The Bucs have it, the Panthers don't at the moment, so look for Tampa to notch their first win of the season. The Broncos faced the Pittsburgh Steelers in an AFC matchup. The Broncos had their opportunities to knock off Tennessee last weekend, but when you look at what happened offensively, they started to stall in the second half. They have to find that level of consistency within their game because they started out like gangbusters. And also, when you look at the backfield, that may be limited with Philip Lindsay being out or day-to-day. You look at Melvin Gordon having to be able to protect that football. He can't continue to put it on the turf like he did against Tennessee defensively. I look at how that offense or that defense will have to attack Pittsburgh in their offense. Ben Roethlisberger is slowly working himself back into football shape, so it wouldn't surprise me to see Denver be a little bit more aggressive against the Steelers. Offensively for Pittsburgh, you saw their offense start to find its way later on in that game against the Giants, especially on the ground. And you look at their tailback, Benny Snell, finally getting it going. He dropped that weight. He looks a little bit quicker, but they still have to find a way to get started like they finished against New York. And defensively, they hit the ground running. They were in mid-season form. I think because of their defense being the way it is, I don't think that was an anomaly. I think they will take off again against Denver, shutting down their passing attack and making them ineffective. I like Pittsburgh. The Washington football team, fresh off their upset victory against Philadelphia, takes on the Arizona Cardinals. Offensively speaking for Washington, you like how quarterback Dwayne Haskins was able to bounce back after a rough start to the game. What needs to happen is that he has to start the game like he finished, and the run game needs to be much better at the start of the contest as well. Defensively, you love the aggressive nature of their defensive line, but they must halt those pre-snap penalties this week. Otherwise, it can gash them like it did early in the game against Philadelphia. Plus, it'll be about push versus pressure versus the mobile quarterback, Kyler Murray. Now, Arizona's offense presents a ton of problems for defense because of the +1 in the run game that Kyler Murray represents. Also, it's his ability to connect with his targets anywhere on the field that makes their offense very tough to defend. Defensively, it'll be interesting to see what creative looks defensive coordinator Vance Joseph can dial up to challenge a Washington offensive line that had its issues blocking Philly up front. I do like Arizona in this game. The way they can spread the field in the passing game takes advantage of where Washington, to me, is the most vulnerable. Kansas City travels to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers, and when you look at that Chiefs offense, just adding a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire makes that offense that much more dangerous than it was last season. They hit the ground running against the Houston Texans and had no ill effects of winning the Super Bowl last year. So good to see the Chiefs doing the right things by their offseason and getting ready to play football. Defensively, I thought they were much better than what they were last year. I was expecting to see a drop-off defensively, but Chris Jones and company did a great job harassing Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson all game long and also forcing some key turnovers. For the Chargers, I thought defensively they were fine. We'll get to that in a second, but offensively, they have to do a better job of creating explosive plays in the passing game. So they have to find ways to do that, whether that's dumping the ball off short to the running backs, finding the tight end over the middle of the field, or like they tried to do against Cincinnati, work deep down the sidelines to their tall targets. But that offense has to play much better if they want a chance to beat a team like Kansas City. Defensively, they did a great job in affecting the pocket around Joe Burrow. Bit of a tougher challenge this week against Patrick Mahomes. So if they can bring it once again within their front seven, we know the back half definitely will appreciate the pass rush given to them by their defensive front. I like Kansas City in this ball game. Offensively, this is going to be a track meet, and right now I don't know enough or trust enough of the Chargers offense to be able to go toe-to-toe with KC. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Houston Texans, and the Ravens are another team that hit the ground running like they finished last year with their offense. Didn't miss a beat. This time it was the passing game with Lamar Jackson throwing the football deep down the field, 80% completion percentage. The offense looked just fine against the Cleveland Browns, and defensively we got introduced to a new star in Patrick Queen, the rookie linebacker out of LSU. In this ball game against Houston, how he keys the run game and how he's able to key on Deshaun Watson could be the difference in what decides this game. Now for Houston, offensively, I like what I saw from David Johnson as far as him being a dual threat guy. We knew that about him going into that ball game, but I feel like they have to find more ways to keep him involved. Even without a Duke Johnson who may or may not play this week, I think David Johnson's role will be huge. And they have to do a better job of recognizing and diagnosing pressure coming off the right side. And that's going to fall in that offensive line to protect Deshaun Watson. And defensively, it's about stopping the run first when you're playing Baltimore. Last week, they got gashed by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And if that happens again, they'll get run out of the stadium by this Ravens ground game. Stopping the run is going to be key, because what's going to happen is going to put your pass rush in play to try to create different opportunities to get to Lamar Jackson. But if they can't stop the run, they'll struggle in this contest. I like Baltimore in this ball game. They're a complete football team on both sides of the ball and also on special teams. So look for the Ravens to go into Houston and get the win. Huge matchup on Sunday Night Football between the Patriots and Seahawks. Cam Newton had a great debut last weekend against the Miami Dolphins, showing no rust whatsoever in his abilities on both ends of offense. I thought the offensive line held up well and was able to give him all the time he needed to find targets downfield. I came away impressed with the defensive effort, as they were replacing a lot of guys on that side of the ball this offseason. And against the Seahawks, it's about being assignment sound and keeping Russell Wilson from escaping the pocket and creating plays downfield, because that's what Wilson did last week as the Seahawks handled the Falcons in Atlanta. The playbook was wide open, and Russell Wilson and company took complete advantage. It'll be interesting to see what adjustments are made for this game, as Russ's legs should be more of an asset in this ball game against the Patriots. Now defensively, what a debut for Jamal Adams, who found himself in the Falcons backfield often, and I'm sure the plan is to use him to track Newton all game long, making it tough for him to utilize him in the run game. I do like Seattle in this one. Look for the Seahawks to continue to allow Russ to be Russ, and he'll pay them off with a win just like last week. And finally, on Monday Night Football, the New Orleans Saints travel to Sin City to take on the Las Vegas Raiders. The Saints offense looked to be in midseason form against the Tampa Bay Bucks, but that offense will probably be without the services of star wide receiver Michael Thomas due to a high ankle sprain. They'll need others like Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook, and perhaps Traquan Smith to step up and fill that void. Defensively, the way they are able to attack the line of scrimmage is impressive, and that gives them a strong chance against the Raiders and their talented tailback, Josh Jacobs. For the Raiders, what an impressive start offensively to their season last week against Carolina. They can attack you in a multitude of ways and have the weapons to really challenge the Saints defense on Monday. Now, Derek Carr being a distributor will be the biggest key in this game, as the Saints will more than likely try to take Josh Jacobs running away from that offense. Defensively, they can't afford a relapse of what happened against the Panthers. Credit to them for getting the key stop on fourth down to win the game, but they shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. I would expect a much better defensive output against New Orleans. I still like the Saints in this ball game, as they are one of the more complete teams in the NFC. So that's it for this week's episode of Football Game Plan's NFL All 32. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts, and don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network, located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating.
It's D-U-E, you tell I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're